Hello and welcome to a DM's Travel Book Club, where each episode we take a look at a different plane as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology as found in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Dun, 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 dun. As ever, I am joined by Fiona, who's over there.
That's me. Hello,
Yeah.
I'm over here. Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me on
And-
yet again, Hamilton. Episode 9.
Episode 9. We are plane hopping like the Bloods, like a basher, like a cutter.
Right.
Yeah.
The various terms for plane walkers.
Plane
Essentially.
walkers, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're plane
Yeah,
hopping we are no longer clueless anymore. We are no longer clueless prime. Right.
I mean, yeah, we yes.
We know the
I feel
chant.
like we've done the chat. Yes, you can see one of us knows all the terminology and catchphrases of Planescape, and one of us is
As a
almost
book.
there. It's a book, yeah, and that book, I'm happy to tell you, is me. Yeah, so we've gone through. Obviously, we've already done all the planes of chaos. We're coming to the end of our planes of lore, but we've got one more. We've got this is our penultimate stop.
Yes.
After all the fun. And all the fun at the cog fair at Mecanus, I was like, where are we going next? And you were like, we're going to the highest reaches of, well, where are we, Hamilton?
Where are we? We are in none other than the Splendors. The Splendor. What is it? Where are we again? Yes, I had it right. We are going to none other than the Splendors of Mount Celestia, the infinite mountain. Some say. The mountain of seven, or the seven mountains. It has multiple names, but is basically the epitome of goodness and then lore. So this is our good lore on the circle. So good is much more higher than lore, but there definitely is very much an ordered system of goodness in inverted commas.
How many times can you say goodness? I think
I don't know. I'm going to say a lot in this episode.
I think we are, aren't we? Yes. So this is the plane of goodness and purity.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it at the top of the episode.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. I will say not my favourite plane, but tell me otherwise. I'm willing to listen to why this is.
The crossed arms.
Crossed my arms.
Such a good.
I'll be honest. Like
Power
we joke off recording that we don't want to be too negative about planes and stuff. And obviously, there's certain planes we love because we ourselves as DMs really enjoy them and stuff. And I will happily admit that Mount Celestia has always been one where I've gone no. Yeah, a bit of a snooze fest, but I'm willing to be proved wrong. I will say again, just looking at the DM's guide, again, a very, very short paragraph about it, this idea that there's a single sacred mountain that rises from a shining sea, and it is like this model of justice and order, celestial grace and endless mercy. So instantly I'm like, oh God, as a person myself, I would not fit in well there. And it's interesting that there's this view of like people aiming to be as righteous as possible, and this it's almost like Pilgrim's Path, which I'm sure we'll go into a little bit. So those are sort of the bits I've got before we started researching this episode from the DM's guide. Again, this very, very teeny tiny paragraph about goodness and righteousness and like the wanting to become perfect in some way.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think it's as I said to you, I enjoyed it because it's been nice and sunny. And I was sitting in a park today and I was sunning myself whilst reading about beautiful glistening seas and endless mountains and valleys and sort of white, stucco walls against the beaches, like Spanish and Greek sort of like seaside resorts was what was in my mind, and I was having a lovely time. But then again, I was enjoying it for the sort of the aesthetic and feeling. I was feeling this sort of light bliss. But to be honest, am I interested in taking a party there? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel again the beauty of this place is. I guess it's trying to put itself above places of beauty like Arborea and Arcadia, which again in my head they are beautiful, luscious places. With the chaos and all that, sort of the greater good of Arcadia, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And here, it definitely feels like we are arrived, and almost this feeling of we're not worthy to be here, and as a result, we need to drive ourselves forward to become worthy in order to be a part of this place. So
No,
that was the
and I
interesting
think-
thing about it.
And there's definitely an individuality to this plane
Yes.
over the greater good, as we said, of Arcadia. This is definitely about personal journey, personal betterment. Obviously, there's obviously like a collective union in this place, but that I feel is the thing that separates it in my mind. Is it's about, people are helping one another, but that is all on a personal journey, and actually the reason for helping each other is part of that personal growth. So it's laden with Buddhist and Hindu and other sort of other Judeo-Christian sort of religious themes in it. But the sort of terms of like the path, like the Eightfold Path, is like the middle way in Buddhism, sort of a similar terminology and stuff, and it has those sorts of things of like charity and
like certain principles that they hold dear, I guess. Yeah, and I think just to sort of round off on it a little bit, like I think when we say like it's very idyllic and peaceful and like this is the perfect it has to be, it's not without hard work.
Oh yeah.
Like it does mention that those who come here work harder than almost anywhere else in the multiverse, and they have to come here and want to do the things like honestly, and that means no shortcuts, no tricking or anything. Like, you're here to do the hard graft. If you want to reach the top, if you want to like ascend in some way, you have to do it for the right reasons. And I think that's the bit that's interested me, that there might be people who come here thinking, it's going to be an easy ride, and
like a lot of sort of like inner people who've gone through sort of inner, like looking for inner faith or inner strength or any sort of like therapy or whatever, those sorts of things that a lot of people come for quick fixes, and this is sort of trying to relay that. And I think that's where its relationship to Biopia, which we will get onto at another point, will come up, because that is similarly focused about hard work, and so there's a lot of connections to that plane, which we'll talk about when we come to the neutral planes, planes of conflict, as they're called.
Yes, the twin paradises of Bitopia.
Yeah, exactly. Which is very much about work, which is the sort of law neutral. I think is the neutral law. I can't remember what the term is now. I forget which one it is, but it's definitely got law based into it, but it has a balance of chaos in there as well. But anyway, yes. So that is the sort of setting. So the setting is very much, the sort of place of the sort of geography of it is it's a massive mountain.
It's a massive mountain.
But it's represented, and as it says at the beginning, it's represented as an infinite mountain of 7 layers, but it also can be seen as 7 individual mountains, because when you reach the peak of each layer is adorned by clouds, hence the backgrounds that we're seeing right now. And so to reach the next layer, pass through these clouds into the next base of another mountain. Obviously in the first layer, that base opens out onto the sea of
the Silvery
Sea, which connects into Elysium, another place we'll get onto in the later phases of the conflict places, and it has Thalasia, which is the endless ocean there, which is where Oceanus, the river that runs around like the Styx but in the upper planes. And there's a lot of connections here actually to a lot of other planes actually on general note, but that's the only one that has a base that's water, and then beyond that it's just clouds below, clouds above. But they have valleys in these mountains. It's not just like an endless single cliff face. It has plateaus and valleys and sort of openings, as well as mini peaks before the major peaks, and some of them have multiple peaks that rise up. So it's not as simple as just a singular image.
And I think that's an interesting one as well, because again, the mention of there's 7 layers, but they're infinite. So yeah, you're right. Like each layer itself, there is so much to it. And I remember again talking about it, that this idea of having, like, in order to proceed, you might be going for several miles, because one of the other unique feature about Mount Celestia is that you can always see the top. You can always see that sort of final sort of layer. But you could be walking for days and days, and look up and get no closer to it. Even though you've travelled and you can feel it, and you may look down and you've not progress much past the beach and all that sort of thing. And I think that's the interesting thing. When we talked before about Mechanis, this idea of the paradox of getting to Mycilla, this feels better here. This idea of like you want to get to the top, but until you do something, like whether it's like repenting on sins or I don't know, becoming a petitioner or a proxy, or willing to travel on a certain path and making sacrifices to it, you're not going to get any closer. And I just think that to me is again, using that analogy you guys sort of gave of that idea of like religion, accepting a god or several gods into your life, or even like the mental health journeys as well, that idea that you are going on, you sticking to a path to help better yourself and be more in control of stuff. So whether or not, and again, I know religion and D&D, they're quite intertwined really, like the gods do walk among us and all that sort of thing. But if you weren't comfortable with that sort of analogy per se about in real world religions, I would akin it to sort of the mental health journey and self-belief.
It's an inner understanding of oneself, isn't it?
That's it,
it's an inner journey.
A purpose, yes.
And I think that's the term, and I think it's probably worth then, whilst we're talking about those paths are a key thing to it. So that is the sort of way one ascends in Mount Celestia, is by taking a path, and those paths are outlined paths. Any cutter is obliged to stay on that path until they reach the next layer, and then they can choose a new path if they wish to once they're on another layer, or they can continue on the same path. Different paths have different things to stick with, and I'll go through them, the main ones, but they also, some of them have, like they say, limited sort of things. So there's one that's sort of given an ultimate level, and that not that any of them can get you to the top, but a lot of the people who follow certain paths only achieve a certain get to a certain level and then can't progress, which is kind of interesting. And I haven't thought about that enough to really understand why that might be. But so the main paths are the Eightfold Path, which is the one I like the most. Which and they also give you benefits as well. So they give you a charisma by 1, and it does say pilgrim. So the whole point of this is put as like a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So why would your characters be coming here is an interesting question that we can talk about later. But that's the sort of thing that it is asking for. And so you must practice patience, pacifism, courage, joy, discipline, generosity, kindness, and teaching others. So they're all very on board positive elements, I think, really. You then got the Path of 5 Virtues, which says you have to be completely honest, have charity, hope, moderation, and tolerance, and you gain +1 to strength. And this one, it says, this is the only one that starts on the same path. People follow this and you reach 6th layer. Then there's the Path of Valor, which is about good deeds, not words, and then that gives you dexterity. Path of Renunciation, which is basically giving up everything. So you're completely, basically like like a Buddhist monk, where you have no worldly possessions apart from clothes, and you must beg for food, and you've given up all ownership. But then it does add mortification of the flesh, which is
interesting.
Which is an addition that I was kind of like, I was thinking of like the sort of more calm inner peace, and then suddenly it was like, okay, so it's added that, which is. And
again, it's that sort of thing where there's self.
But that can also be oath of silence, so that doesn't have to be a physical attack of the body. So I just think to clarify that. But even though it does put those things in there.
Absolutely, yes. So there is definitely different options to go to, and of course, I think it would inspire you to make your own paths. As I say this, I now remember that I have actually visited Mount Celestia in one of my games, and what we did in order to get through various layers, we didn't get to the top, but we got certain challenges, which I think are akin to this idea of like showing virtues of like charity and hope and all that sort of thing. And it was very interesting. Again, maybe it's that sort of thing where when we build characters for like combat, or because I think we spoke about it with a few of the other players, like what level would you take your characters to? I think for Mount Celestia, realistically, any level, like it's not, I don't, obviously that you could do fighting here, but then you just die instantly, and there's no need for it. So I can imagine you go very low level to Mount Celestia or visit it, and then it is about, okay, so if you're not willing, if it's not going to be combat encounters, it may be more social or role-playing encounters, which would fit along with this idea of like being tested or being, going on a pilgrimage and wanting to advance where you're going. You see what I mean?
No, and I can see it like, because there are places on this plane that are of much, benefit. Say you've been cursed with something that requires wish spells, there are places that will overcome those sorts of things. So if you become a vampire, you can go and drink of waters on layers where you can have that cured of you. So there are those sort of like, that's something that could happen very much regularly in a campaign of something that you need to, like, you want to get rid of, like getting rid of like vampirism, or you've got like or if you need to petition a god for something particular. And there's also, we'll get on to other people, like there are powers there like Moradin where you might need to go to the Forge, the Soul Forge, and gain magical weapons to then fight battles against, like a demon lord trying to take over your hometown or something like that. So there are, and therefore you might then be judged. You could have that sort of like being judged by your worthiness for Thor's hammer or something like that. Do you know what I mean? That sort of theory.
Well, and here's an interesting point that I didn't really think of, but this idea that even those with evil alignments are suffered in quotation marks here willingly, as long as they're here looking to amend their vile ways. So this idea that, like you said, something has happened to them and they've been turned into an undead or anything like that, but they want to be cured, then it's like, well, of course that makes sense. Whereas if you just so happen to, I don't know, become a lich, and you're just like, I'm just visiting my auntie, and they're like, no, away, vile lich, unless you're going to do something. So I think that's, again, as another sort of interesting in-party tension, where if you do have maybe more neutral or evil characters, perhaps, that they are tolerated, but there's that almost expectation that when sort of in-laws ask you questions where they don't really want to know the answer, but it's small talk, but also they're very invasive questions. That's how I imagine petitioners on this realm are. It's like, oh, so you're going to be cured of your vile ways? When is that happening? And you're like, no.
Because I prefer this place to Arcadia, where it's the sort of like, it's so good, and it like, this is kind of like, this is more,
it's reined in, isn't it?
This is more reined in. Actually, is this good? Actually, I think this might be good, neutral, lawful. So I'm getting all confused, but it's not the super goodness of Arcadia, where it's just like sickeningly lawful as well.
Yeah, it's sycophantic.
Yeah, because they're way too lawful, and it's just like, this is I mean, it's still it's slightly sugary, but it is but there is something about that. There's a lot of layers where it does say there's people on the prop powers will they want people to come here for their own betterment, their own self betterment, and it's not actually, the judgment is actually surprisingly less judgmental. It's more like, as you say, it's more like there is a test that you can undertake, but you don't have to take it, sort of thing. It's just, you're just here to take the test. It's not, do you know what I mean? So long as you're here to take the test, it doesn't matter,
just again, I just to keep going on about that distinction between Arcadia and Mount Celestia, I agree. I think what's interesting about Arcadia, when we talked about it, it does feel like we're doing it for the greater good, but it feels very, very selfish, and it feels very much that it's what is good, but then it's very subjective, because they'll be like, well, it's good for me,
more people as well,
more people, it's us, those in the majority, all that sort of thing.
It's very much here, us versus them, isn't it?
Whereas here it is like, exactly as you said, it's betterment for yourself, and it's like, this is good for you should you choose it, and this is what you want, and all that sort of very much, it does feel very therapeutic in some places. Like, well, what do you want? And then you realize that it was with you this whole time as soon as you get up six bloody layers.
And I think that sort of then leads us quite neatly onto the people who live here. And so, like, so for example, in Arcadia, the people that are there, one of the mainstays of Arcadia is the Einharaya, I can never say it, which is the roving armies of people keeping out people who are evil, and so that kind of, and like protection of like my domain, and it's all about like stopping people coming through. But then the main people in the main sort of native peoples of the land are archons, which are these the petitioner archons, which are beings that are sort of like, they're basically what become Asimars, actually, that's what Asimars are related to, and they are archons that have gone to the Prime and left their home of Mount Celestia, but they are there as a lot of them, the first ones are they've got different castes, if that's the right term for it.
Yeah, like a hierarchy.
Hierarchy, yeah. I don't know if that was probably, yeah. Which is, you have a lantern, hound, warden, sword, and tome. But the main ones, lantern, the first ones, are there as guides to guide people up. Initially, even in its inherent peoples, it's about, hey, I'm here to help. How can I help you? Like it's going to an American store rather than an English. There's the difference between going to an American mall is Mount Celestia and going to an English small town shop is Arcadia.
Oh wow!
You know what I mean?
Nobody sue us over that comparison. That would be terrible. But yeah, this idea
No, I
that
was just talking about the League of Gentlemen thing.
Oh, so, I see.
Because we said the League of Gentlemen thing was very Arcadia.
Are you local? Yes.
Are you local?
I got the joke now.
Sorry.
No, that's how late I am to the thing. But no, I completely agree. I think there's these lantern archons. They are like these hovering balls of light with very little intelligence, but it's that sort of a will to do good. So I see it almost like a very happy dog that's happy to see you, but not overly energetic. So it's like, how can I help? I like you. Let's go. All that sort of thing. Hey, listen.
Like a really not annoying version of the paperclip.
Exactly. Yeah. It looks like you're trying to
it looks like you're trying to better yourself.
Yeah, it looks like you're trying to ascend the first layer of Mount Celestia. Would you like some help with that? Okay. Oh my god, that's all they're going to say now. They're all going to be little, hey, happy, but again, in a non-irritating way, where instantly the players will find irritating, but nothing they can do about it. Because if they do something about it, then all the other archons are going to come down on them like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, because you then get exactly. So the hound ones know the paths up and down the mountain, the first thing, and they basically do also help people, but they're basically there more as guides running up and down the mountains. Then you've got the swords, which are very obvious. They are the ones that help but they don't go out and fight people. They go and stop. Well, they are there to destroy Mount Celestia. The people who want to seek to destroy Mount Celestia and its inhabitants. So they do go off and fight in battle and in Hells and in the Abyss to sort of like stop plots to destroy it, because Mount Celestia is seen as the ultimate antithesis of the sort of evil planes and the sort of like the one that they most want to take over. Basically, it's seen as the jewel in the sort of good crown or whatever the word is. And then you have throne archons and tome archons, which are basically the higher ups that rule, and so thrones are lower than tomes, and there are only very few tomes. And they look after the lands and realms. The throne and tome archons have they have also people on the prime layer, which are also called trumpet archons, which also makes you think of the trumpet, which sounds the end of the world. The trumpet archons are of resurrection songs, so their duty is to guide petitioners called back to the prime by raise dead or resurrection spells. So anyone who's they are there, they are sort of like they bring you back from death back when you once you pass to Mount Celestia, and you then go back when you get called back. There are fallen archons, which are the ones that I said that have then become taught prime people about enchantment, astrology, smithing, writing, the signs of the sun and the clouds, and they were supposedly these people called the Watchers, and they were banished, and they're the people that eventually became the Asimars. And so those are them. And then our famous one that I said we should talk about is Zariel.
Zariel! Yes, a very interesting thing. So what I know of Zariel, very briefly, from when we looked into it for another DM's book club, because she is a very high level creature to fight, but is like one of the first fallen sort of angels who now rules as one of the devils, sort of archdevils in Avernus, and that is her lair.
Yeah, and she rules the first layer of hell, which is pretty.
It's pretty good. From what you were saying again off podcast, this idea that she went almost willingly into Avernus and into things, be like, I will do good, and goes onto the battlefield to kill the devils and that sort of, and the demons as well, keep them back. Yeah. Sorry, the demons. Sorry, and then presumably did some sort of deal with Asmodeus, and then has. Again, I like this idea of like she's still righteous. So, sort of extrapolating from that, this idea that you could have the ultimate goods, and your party is there, and then there starts to be lots of fallen, like people turning evil in some way, or losing. This idea that they are, these archons are supposed to be like the very pinnacle of like nobility, compassion, and goodness. And as soon as, again, maybe a few hints that it's not all, something's not right with some people, and just letting them know, like, what could you do about that? Because then you could
overly zealousness turning the switch, on that line where, like, her point was that she loved defending, like, she was a sword archon that went out and led which became higher up, and then led armies, and therefore became overly, like, embodied in, like, the
enjoying the
battlefront, so much so that, and so she sort of, and people started to question her, whilst Asmodeus was saying, "Oh no, I love your commitment to your cause, because
you're great."
Yeah, you're doing a great job at commitment to, like,
fighting. She was technically headhunted into the
Nine exactly. Exactly. And he sort of said, "Well, you do such a good job at fighting both devils and demons. Why not work with the devils to fight the demons who are trying to take Mount Celestia?" And so she has this belief still that she's doing good because she's fighting off the demons that want to take Mount Celestia, whilst secretly, if you supposedly in the text that I read on the wiki, is that if you press her, she will start to she knows deep down that she's done wrong.
That would be that's incredibly cool. But again, to go to the first, again, from briefly looking at Descent into the Furnace from the module and just reading about her, she's like a level critical rating, challenge rating, of 26. So and that's in the 5th edition, obviously. I assume she might have stats from earlier as well, but she's a toughy. Legendary actions, tough cookie, legendary actions and lair actions, and it's a hell. So, but yeah, and I think that could be really interesting, like, that idea that we don't talk about Zariel. We don't talk about these things.
Yeah, I can imagine that's kind of a thing that, like, someone mentions it. Yeah,
but maybe you need.
The other day we saw Zariel, right? She's one of you.
Yeah.
It all goes just completely silent.
But that could be an interesting one. Maybe, again, if you're thinking about, okay, well, I mean, obviously we're going to explore in DM's Travel Book Club the 9 Hells in the next episode. This idea that we need to go to 9 Hells, we need to face off Zariel. Why don't we go and find those folks who know her the best? Yeah. And she originally came from here. So again, another way to come back to Mount Celestia, by doing like a research like mission to find out this stuff. But like you said, nobody's willing to talk about it.
I can imagine though Bahamut would be up for talking about it. They seem like the sort of person that would just always fizzy bands would always want to talk about.
Fizzy bands, our favourite guy. So okay, so just I guess what I'm gonna ask you. So we've got the sort of main idea that there are these 7 infinite layers, and a sort of Reven fog, like you sort of said, with the 7th heaven shining through. I would like to know, what are the names of the 7 layers?
You want to know the names of the 7 layers? So you start out at the base layer, which is called Lunia, the silver heaven. And so this is known that because it's the layer close to the astral plane, and in some ways resembles the astral in that it has a near dark sky of a full moon filled with silvery stars that illuminate the region along with the moonlight.
Yeah, never daytime is what I saw. And this idea that everyone has to come to this layer in order to meet Mount Celestia, so whether it's by portaling or you're on a boat or something, you always end up in this.
My favourite thing about the entrance into the Mount Celestia is always in a portal over the sea, so you fall into the sea, and then you have to wash upon the shores. Which is that sort of idea of washing upon the shores of heaven, sort of thing. I guess that's the theory of it, isn't it? And then, but there's always archons there to stop anyone
help
from
those, the lifeguards
that aren't ready for it. So there are lifeguards. There's a Baywatch.
There's a David Hasselhoff.
There's a David Hasselhoff in every
archon.
heaven.
Wow, didn't think we'd say that word tonight. But as well, the other thing to note is that it's holy water as well in the Silvery Sea. So of course, undead or fiends burn without mercy.
So there is also another reason for it, because it's also a good defense.
It's a very good defense. It stops those fiends coming across. But I love that idea. Like, everything's fine, and you've got your undead zombie pal, and it's just like, oh no, Brian, no,
Brian, no. Poor Brian. It was Gary the other day we were talking about.
It was Gary, Brian. It's all Stephen, all that sort of thing is my one. So.
Then the second layer then is Mercuria, golden heaven. Seeing a cosmological annotated notice here. Also, actually, it's very the top layer, we'll get to that, is very as Greek gods, isn't it? So anyway, but these are Roman and Greek terminologies. But yeah, so second heaven is a place. The golden heaven is a place of air and high hope. So it's thin air, which makes you giddy. The mountains are young, and so like this thrusting toward the sky as if to grab it. Do you know what I mean? It's all very,
very hopeful, isn't it?
Very hopeful, yeah. And it's sort of like, you can imagine that sort of like alpine, sort of low alpine landscape, very pretty. And it has a golden sun radiating down upon it. Very nice. See, this is what I was enjoying. This is why I was enjoying this when I was in the sunshine. I was like, I'm just resting in these mountains. The sun is radiating on me. It's very nice and quiet.
It's very peaceful.
It wasn't the battles of battle that we're going to have, or the sort of all the nonsense going on in Arcadia. It was all lovely. And then there's the third layer is called Venya, the pearly heaven, which is the home to the gods of the halflings, which is and it's lit by a soft nacreous, don't know, white glow from the airy vault above. They are old and rounded mountains, rarely laced with snow. Brooks run warm and clear. I was just thinking the rolling hills, the sort of classic chocolate box English countryside, sort of brooks and Constable's Hay Wain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of picture.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, again, because it's like you said, this sort of the home of Yondala, the pantheon, the halfling pantheon. So halflings obviously have big communities, sort of with their burrows and the whole. Again, very much The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. The Hobbiton at the beginning. It's like that. That's how I was picturing it. This idea of beauty and tranquility, and everything is peaceful here, and the communities
the dawn
love each
chorus
other.
song playing, the or the Hovis song. The
Hovis song, yes, the world song, or whatever it's called, but yes, the Hovis, and Yondala is very interesting as well. We won't go into too much detail about it here, but because halflings are lucky by nature, they just happen to be in the right place at the right time, but they avoid conflict. Like, their communities are, that's I guess that's something that they managed to keep out of the big wars and stuff. One of it. So what it was that Yondala at some point realized there's always conflict and stuff, and managed to hide communities from that. So that's why you get the lucky feature and all that sort of thing. It's like, just so happens that danger does not come near these communities at all. And I just thought it made sense that of course Yondala will be on one of the many layers.
Yeah, exactly. And also, when you go to the realms in that, which we'll talk about the realms a bit more, I think, later, but you have to save or from not wanting to leave, because once you're there, you're like, why would I want to go anywhere else?
Well, and that's another big thing about halfling communities, is that they're like, well, we've got everything here, why would you need to go? Like, they love stories, they love people coming to talk about them, and they'll be like, oh, and they'll be very, like, they'll ask questions, they'll show you treasures, almost like, when you send a postcard to someone and they have all the postcards that you've ever sent them and all that sort of thing, so like, look at these adventures, and they love that sort of thing, and they're like, oh, would you like to go on an adventure? Oh, no, not for me. And they're very happy being in their communities, but at the same time, if one of the younger sort of halflings gets fancy feet, I think it's called, where they get itchy to wanting to go out, there'll be a big celebration, like, enjoy your adventure, come back soon. And then they do, like, if they want to, they can go out. So they're not like stopping you from going out. But it's this idea, I love this idea that, oh no, that sounds like too much for me. Okay, tea? Is that sort of like, I just
very
love that
much
sort of
Hobbiton.
It's just a very lovely, like, they love adventures, they love stories, but they don't want to do it themselves. They're very happy to do
cozy up by a fire with a good book, basically.
Exactly. So you really get that feeling here as well. This idea of the green fields as well. Like, everything's comfortable.
No, it all has the sort of the coziness. It just talks about coziness over, and the sun is warmer, the wind's milder, greener fields. It just, flowers always seem to be in bloom, and troubles are forgotten as quickly as the passing rains.
Yeah.
You know what? Like, come on. This is just comfort food eating, reading this book.
It's like if you go on holiday and you spend every day by the beach. Some people absolutely love doing nothing. I would get bored within 2 days and be like, right, I need to go out, I need to do something, I need to make something, I need to do some editing, I need to do some recording, because that's just the way I am. So it works for some people, it works clearly for halfling communities, but I think
as someone who's always on the go, it was very nice to enjoy time reading,
and that's fine,
pretending that I was not doing anything.
Yes. No,
So
that's
then
fair.
we'll move on to the fourth layer, which is Solania, the Electrum heaven.
Somalia. Yes.
So this fourth layer is the home to the Dwarven pantheon. It has a solid, earthy, comforting embrace of a warm fireside. It's blessed by a sky that shines with a glow of burnished silver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously very mountainous and got lots of valleys and big mountains and striking winds. So therefore, you want to get inside to these magnificent inner cities that the underground cities that the dwarves create. And we'll probably talk a bit more about those. So that's where all the dwarves are. Do you want to stop here and have a chat whilst we're on the fourth layer, or do we want to circle back? As a travel guide.
I'll talk quickly about what I know about Moradin. So that's the pantheon of the dwarves. What's interesting about the dwarves? Again, it's similar to the Yondala and the halfling communities. Moradin has always been about, he's like the perfect craftsman, but it's never done. He will make something that is absolutely beautiful, but will go, this needs to be improved. So that idea of advancing, that idea of like perfecting yourself and perfecting your craft, very, very key things here. As well as with Moradin, like there's a sense of family and clan, and that's being very important, that, you know, you don't stray far from home, you don't, you know, and this is the big story about how he created the dwarves. He molded them in his own image through this thing called the Soul Forge, and like sort of making them out like that. Interestingly enough, and this is like a quick side tangent, so the Duergar, so the dwarves that sort of fell in this respect as well, they were a clan that got too greedy. So this idea that, you know, gold is important, like, because you can make beautiful things, you can make things that are stronger, you know, you can make all this stuff and treasure and stuff like that. And it's good to have, but there is like a thing about not falling to the greed of it. And the Duergar were claimed to get too greedy because they wanted to dig down, find the jewels, find the gems, dig deeper and deeper and deeper, until eventually they broke through a layer, and that's where the mind flayers sort of kicked in, and they realised they'd been sort of taken over by this sort of psionic sort of calling, essentially. And Moradin just abandoned them, saying no, they are not within our ideals of dwarven clans. Oh, wow. So it's a very interesting. We do a whole episode on it on DM's Book Club, and I think it's a very interesting talk about, like, because there's a whole thing about, well, are the Duergar evil dwarves, or have they been this sort of mistreated in a way? So it's shunned unfairly. Yeah, sort of. Exactly. So I think it's interesting that then Moradin, obviously, it's on Mount Celestia, this idea of good, and this is what every good dwarf should do, and all that sort of thing, and yet, I don't know, the story of the Duergars or something. So that's a complete side tangent again. It's not really in here per se.
No, but it's very interesting. And it is.
It just shows a different side to these pantheons as well. Like, similarly, like with Yondala, there'll be probably other halflings and all that sort of thing, like of evil gods and stuff like that. So I think it's just interesting to see the different ways about it. But these are the ones that are good, in quotation marks, that are on Mount Celestia, which is the perfect and the goodness of that. So
yeah, I think they are the powers and the stories behind all of them, and their own individual creation myths are quite fun in their own ways. I think one of the things that I just picked out on this thing from one of the principal towns, which is called Stonefall, where every service is covered with tales told in stone, from the creation of the Dwarfars as the rise of the Great Kingdoms to the creation of steely masterworks of forge and fire. And I love that idea, though, of this city, which is just made up of just every single wall is an entablature of stories. I think that's really cool. I just loved it. It was just one of the imageries that came. It's a great
image. Yeah. Like the idea that your whole world is a library. Yeah. Or like, and you could just take a tablet off, and then another one shrinks into place, and it's more of the same story.
Exactly. Really, I don't know. There's some lovely little bits in this. And I think one of the fun things about this plane as well is that you can only pass through this plane through an inner journey. So you can walk to the top of the mountain, but you'll never go beyond the clouds, because you only can do it by having yourself tested by a question from a character called Jarizian. I think I said that right. Jazirian. Which we meant is the great god of the Coatl, which are the winged serpents.
So winged and feathered serpents, yes.
Yeah, which lives in Ouroboros, the gates of wisdom, where virtue untested is merely innocence. Untempered iron can never become steel. Each journey is a journey into death, but each death is a rebirth. It's all very...
Yeah,
it's all
big,
very...
the infinite sort of Ouroboros. Yeah,
exactly. And so yeah, and that realm has some fun ideas and has some relation to, though Sardiel's Ruby Palace is said to appear here from time to time. Interesting.
Nice. Lovely.
Journeys through the multiverse. That's an interesting one, because that's a character that we mentioned on Fizzbands. That's a very interesting part of the pantheon. And then this realm is one where words are made flesh and speech acts as a summoning. So magic involving speech, like holy words, enthrall, and chant, and the various speak with spells, summon forth physical manifestations as well. Sometimes summoning creatures like holy word will bring a diva. So you better have a good reason.
Because it's like, because otherwise that's like, oh god, like it's appeared and it's now the word.
Well, you'd say if you went like,
identity.
oh god,
oh god, oh no, shit, it's be careful what you wish for, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
that's quite cool.
So that is we're racking up the peaks. Well, the fifth peak then is Mercian, the Platinum Heaven.
I think. Yes.
Sky similar to Solarian, silver burns even brighter, undead suffer points. It's great sweeping plains. It's very much plains of choirs and heraldry, and sort of very much like the sort of sort of land in my mind. It's very much the sort of like, not a lot seems to happen on this there's things there, but it seems to be about healing fountains and sort of like this is your very sort of Elysian Fields feeling place. It's kind of what I gathered from that one. But it also does include one of my favourite places, which is Rempha, the city of the sands of time.
Yes.
Which includes rogue Modron Secundus.
Yeah, I know. And annoyingly, my pages stuck together, so I didn't see this. But yes, it's identified as a rogue Modron, very close to the top of Mount Celestia. And it's just, again, and also with that, as we sort of mentioned this in the previous episode, this idea that there are sort of several layers of this hierarchy, and Primus is at the top, but there's quite a few Secundus or Secundi, and so this idea that there's one of the second in command is here on Mount Celestia, it's probably not a good sign. This idea of this clockwork maker to the cork is
exactly, who's up to something by creating he's obviously got a path because he's made it up, so he's obviously taken on some sort of path, which is a very individual thing to do. And he's creating gates to the demi-plane of time, which sounds really cool, and is also trying to make a gate opening device generally, which is the size of a large town. So he's up to something, which is a really good little plot hook if you want to. I was struggling for a Mechanis thing, you were struggling for a Mount Celestia thing, there you go. You were in Mechanis. You get your high level. Here's a bounty from Primus themselves.
Yeah. Get this rogue Secundus.
Rogue Secundus. Figure out what the heck he's up to. Building gates to the, and then you can have and time travels weirdly in this realm. So things can go. Time can go forwards, backwards, fast forward, slowly and stop completely. So you can have a lot of fun with some things there. I think that could be a fun little...
that sounds like a nightmare for players, but wonderful for the GM. You're like, cool, the time has stopped and it's always 5 to 5.
Yes.
No.
It's the Russian doll, I guess, in some ways.
It is the Russian doll, yeah. No, that's I guess that's interesting. And again, the idea that this whole town is now a gate somewhere, it feels very much like Buffy and the Hellmouth. The whole of Sunnydale is over, and you're like, oh no.
But that's it. You could have that, couldn't you? You could have this like the gate goes wrong, it opens up a portal accidentally to the abyss, starts.
The abyss, the Nine Hells,
any of those fun things, and. Not that this is fun. Limbo.
Pandemonium.
Yeah, exactly. All the fun ones.
All the fun ones to make it a little bit more exciting. All the chaos planes. Absolutely.
Just the. Oh, for goodness sake! From Fiona's even like yawning. It's
Secundus!
So and then we got the sixth heaven is Jova. which is this glittering heaven, which is the heaven of gems. I just imagine this very sparkly, shinies. You know, when you get your shiny stickers, it's going to be like those, or like
it's the
shiny
back of
shoes.
that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I was going to imagine it's like that. And it's consists of celestial vault whose floor and ceiling are lined with great rubies and garnets, pulsing with healthy half-fire glow. And this is where all the archons, basically the high ups, live. And it's got a heavenly city. And there's, it's a bit boring. It's just defended city, and then you get to Cronius, which reminds me of the Kronos, which is the god. But the thing that I was trying to get to the point is Kronos killed his father with a blade hidden between two mountains. So that was all. So it just reminded me of that was all. So you could have something about the Kronos blade.
And what's interesting about the Kronos sort of like illuminated heaven is that it's one teeny tiny paragraph because not many people go there.
Yeah.
It's unlikely you'll get there.
It's basically the highest level, and that is where the governors know about it only because Zafgil, the Tomarchon of Mysteries and rule of Headbudmad, goes there and returns. So there is someone that you can talk to.
There is something up there, yeah. It's like you could. So can I speak to the person in charge? Like, one moment, I will go check their diary, and they fly up, and they're not seen for several days, and they come back going, I'm sorry, they're booked out to the end of the century.
Yes. But
I could put you in.
But again, it leads back to that classic saying that I can't remember if it's Buddhist, but it's a general saying of those who know don't speak and those who speak don't know. And so anyone who goes there that leaves, it's the place where sorrow cannot enter, a place to leave bard speechless and sage is sightless. Most of them are probably just faking it and have more idea than any other book. But as long as they spin a good yarn, some bash will pay them for the trouble.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think, again, it goes back to the whole idea about, like, you're always on this journey, always on this pilgrimage, but just, it never ends. And it shouldn't end. You're constantly learning, you're constantly improving yourself. And where you are, obviously, is better than where you were, but, you still have ways to go. And I think that's an interesting one. And nice to see that, I guess. Like, and I know we're almost navel gazing a little bit here, but I think it's an interesting one that you will never get to where you need to go. But it's not about the destination; it's the journey along the way.
The journey that you're on. But it is that, and if anything is navel gazing, it's going to be Mount Celestia. Come on, totally.
Yes,
and it's,
absolutely.
And it's but it is true, and I think those things it definitely just plays a lot on all of those mythologies, and I think it's interesting for it in some respects. I think it's also quite known to some people, and I think there's there's the things that are more interesting, the things that you mentioned, more like the halfling deities and the deities of the of the dwarven pantheons are interesting, and then on top of the sort of little side bits to it. Is it worth talking about sort of magical conditions then on this plane?
Yes, but I was going to say, just before we want to talk about it, you did miss out one very important pantheon. Yes, Baphomet.
Oh yes.
How could you forget? So, do you want to quickly talk about Baphomet?
Yes, then? I can do. Yes, sorry. Yeah, Baphomet is on this plane. He has a palace which is actually, it's a glittering wonder built entirely from the Great Dragon Lord's treasure hoard, which I imagine is pretty great. But unlike all the other pantheons, his temple exists on the first 4 layers.
Yes.
Individually. Somehow has access. Yeah. No one even understands why or how.
Yeah, it's Noel's house party, but with Baphomet. That's how I see it.
Yes. I was thinking more Crystal Maze, actually, funnily enough. Okay. I think it's like got the 4 zones of the Aztec, and you talk to
the 4 layers. You got the Luna.
Yeah, exactly.
Mercury, Venya.
Yeah. And so so if you go to there, you can actually go through that, and he allows progress to bypass long and difficult climbs if he deems them worthy to do that. He will ask you to do that to prove to go through, but you can use it as we're talking about there is no shortcuts. Well, here's one shortcut for you. But
again, it's with the blessing of a god.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
not too bad. But proving yourself in front
Dungeons
of
and Dragons.
A dragon.
It's a platinum dragon.
It's a platinum dragon. It's gonna you're gonna be worth. Yeah, you've got to be honest about it and show your worth for it. So it makes sense, this shortcut, as it were.
And it also has gates to the elemental plane of air and the astral sea, where he's also got places, and he's got guards, which are 4 guardian guardian dragons that guard all the gates. And there's not actually too much on it apart from that it's very much it's got this really weird little quirk to it. And if you ever want to go get hold of Bahamut, that's where he is.
Yeah, I find that a little bit surprising, actually. But again, I don't know, because we've yet to read about Battle and the Nine Hells, about whether Tiamat has a similar sort of like... I wonder if, and this is the thing I always think about planes that are have a good alignment, is that there's not really as much on them compared to, let's say, planes of chaos or planes of evil, just because... lots of there's a story hook there. Let's go defeat the evil. There's chaos. We need to put order in place. So it doesn't surprise me that there isn't as much necessarily about Bahamut compared to other powers that we've looked at in previous things. But it just feels a bit like, he is pretty cool. Like his whole history is pretty interesting, and it's you'd think there'd be a bit more on like, it covers 4 layers. It's like, you've gone through like various palaces and stuff like that. You think like, what's up the first? Like, is there a swimming pool? Is there a heated sauna? Is there a council?
Is there a nice heated sauna on this place? In this place?
Yeah. Do you have a balcony? Yeah.
If there was ever going to be as I said, the spa retreat plane, it's definitely this, isn't it? And I think like there's other places like they've got the. It's all going to be pools and parties. Right.
It's like the idea that Bahamut is in some sort of like a robe with the nails out, with the separators, and just like, wait, sorry, I've got guests. Hang on, coming.
Getting a facial, just like
facial with like with various light lantern archons, just sort of.
Just like if that's new, Bahamut doesn't get up. He just goes, just join me. And you just go in all your party, just go and sit down.
Oh, stop grovelling! Just come on, stand up.
Like young dragons come along and deftly, with their quite large claws, but deftly paint nails.
Each nails. Yep.
See,
right?
Come on.
Yeah,
There's an adventure.
Yeah, but that's about. Anyway, what are the magical conditions? Let's talk a bit about that. So, from what I've understood. Again, similar to most of the other planes of lore we've looked at, any spell, obviously spells are changed in this level, so spells that promote chaos, evil or harm are simply uncastable, which makes sense to the point where it talks about this modifier to spells, and it talks about spells that are cast of pure spirit and a good heart have a far greater chance of succeeding than those who have not. And this idea that it is a table in sort of the big primer book. It talks about if you are lawful good, then they're going to cast. No matter what it is, it's going to cast fine. And then if you take 1 degree away from that, you get a minus 10% to the success of that. Presumably a spell attack roll or to that. Or you roll a d100 and then you see from that. Yeah. And then if you're another step, that's another. You're 2 steps away, so that's minus 30. And to the point where if you're at chaotic evil, it's a minus 90. So it's going to be really difficult to cast stuff. So again, the conflict per se between sort of fiends and devils and archons and celestials, it's not going to necessarily happen on Mount Celestia because they're just impossible to cast spells unless something happens that gravely affects the spirit and the description of this.
But then a lawful evil creature is only minus 30%. It's really the demons that are really
screwed essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yes, you're right. It's definitely got a weighting, as they say. Other than that, though, there is conjuration summoning. Conjuration lawful creatures are easier to sort of manage than chaotic creatures. Divinations all are true no matter what. Necromancy, life enhancing, obviously act twice as effective as normal. So I basically just double the duration or double the dice. Killing spells rebound and reverse their usual effects, doubling the strength of the intended target. So like it will double the hit dice to the damage to the target. So if you do necromantic power word kill, you're going to be healing someone.
Yeah, it's like
which
whoops.
is kind of interesting way if you're like running out of spells that you know, but you know power word kill, you could heal a
I've been
a
saving
party
this
member.
one, and then you're like, oh, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
But yeah, you can use it if your cleric's down, but you've got that does happen. Wild magic is diminished.
As always on the planes of law,
Exactly.
wild magic don't even bother. Essentially, it's this even diminished stuff. I will say the optional rule for Mount Celestia that comes from the DM's guide. Yeah, well, it actually talks about it in the book a little bit. So that I think there is this. I think this was the original. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be completely wrong. I think this is the original plane where, being a part of the plane, you get something that happens to your character, and compared to all the other planes, which obviously have had these optional rules put in maybe a bit later, this one I think has already had it. So, good creatures are literally blessed by the persuasive beneficiary of this plane. So creatures of good alignment gain the benefit of a blessed spell as long as they remain on the plane. And in addition, finishing a long rest on the plane grants a good creature the benefit of a lesser restoration spell. So this optional rule of blessed beneficence. This is talked about it. That's certainly that lesser restoration spell. There is something similar on one of the planes. I can't remember which one it is to think, but the higher up you go, the more chance you get of being blessed and purified even more. There's definitely did talk about this idea. The further you go up, you get purified of. You get rid of your poison. You're immune to poison. You're getting all these things because you. So it's a similar thing, I think.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. But then, as I said, that once you get to some of the upper levels, there are places like in Goldfire. There's the Chalice of Gold, is it called, or the Crucible of Light, which is the lotus-shaped crucible of pink marble, perpetually heated by the warmth of the light that streams from within, and creatures entering are purged of all evil, as it said, that we including cursed items, lycanthropy, and other magical sources. And anything evil that's tossed in is destroyed. So but I think that idea of like you had a cursed weapon that was like eating your soul or something like that, it's one of those things you could just toss into that thing and it would be burned and the curse would be removed. And even on that plane, the light that streams down upon it causes 1d6 per 1d4 cumulative per round damage to any undead or evil. So it's like, it's not just like if it's a vampire, it says vampires there, it's like 1d4 in the first round, 2d4, 3d4, 4d4, every round it goes up in cumulative. So there's a lot of those sorts of things that happen on this plane, so they're worth just keeping an eye out for if you want to add them and add them in. And then I think
the other thing I just want to quickly add about Goldfire is in each of one of these towns that's sort of mentioned in these books, there's obviously, it tells you about special conditions, as we just talked about, but also services. And so here I thought it was interesting that wands of light imbued with the radiance of the sun are sold freely on the squares and markets for use by travelers to darker realms. So instantly I'm like, ooh, this is where, again, you would maybe do a stop off here at Mount Celestia, get up a few minutes, go to a lovely market and getting some of these things and taking them to other places. So I can imagine if you, as long as you had like maybe like what I call a Nintendo Wii strap to your wand, that you could do like go to Pandemonium and use that to light your way around. That's
a fantastic idea.
I mean, again, it still doesn't help people seeing where you are because obviously they'll see you, but I still like if you were worried about like casting like a light spell, didn't want to say it, or you just wanted something like that you could have in your hand.
It's never-ending light. It's just a great little addition to
rather than a torch. Exactly.
I mean, you can always hide it away, can't you, in your jacket? You just need it.
Exactly. But like I said, I would put on like, you could get a wrist strap for your wand so that it doesn't fly off into with the winds of Pandemonium. So no, anyway, that was me making those connections. I was like, I'd go here to get my supplies.
Mount Celestia is a good it's R&R and tooling up for adventures, isn't it?
I think a good plot hook would be like tooling up, getting good stuff, or like you said, like burning or getting rid of curses, or getting rid of maybe cleansing weaponry of various things, and then getting them re-imbued with The goodness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, getting some holy water, getting all your stuff stocked up, prepared, having a good rest, getting rid of some curses, going back out for a fight. That's it.
Yeah. It's a proper downtime.
Mount Celestia, 18 to 30.
Yeah.
So,
it's a downtime plane. That's what I'm seeing.
It is exactly. The other place that has got a cool little effect is the glass tarn, which is on the third layer. It's a mountain lake of half-frozen water, holds a conduit to many other planes of the Great Ring. But what you can do is when you put an offering and cast into its water, a light flashes up from the incomprehensible depths of the tarn. And when the light reaches the surface, it comes out as either a sword archon or an overwhelming vision that knocks the recipient unconscious for 1 to 6 hours. Brackets, poor sod. I love that.
Yeah.
But like, it powerful prophecies and clairvoyance and mystic trances. So again, like if you come for answers, like you want to gain a prophecy on something, or you've been made aware of a prophecy about you. I'm thinking of the Harry Potter Phoenix, Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah, pensive, that sort of, yeah.
But that sort of idea of like, there's something that you've been told there's something about, you don't know what it is. So you travel to this tarn, you have to make this journey, and you get there, and it's like a good character piece, isn't it? It's another character piece to add in.
Yeah, I can imagine it being so big and beautiful. Again, I can't remember where it is in the world. This idea of like just a deep, when it's so deep it goes black at the bottom, and just seeing that view, and then seeing something coming rushing up towards you. It sounds terrifying as a result. But I can imagine
as someone who has
beautiful.
Minor thalassophobia, which is a good term and comes from Thalasia. As we talk about it, there's I don't like the idea. So I like being on the sea, but when you're swimming in open water, and then you think about humpback whales and you think, fuck, they're huge, I want to get out of the water. There's that sort of, do you know what I mean? You sort of become very much aware that, holy shit, things in this water are 20 million times bigger than I am, and
you are just a speck. You are just a little bit of water on the waves.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm with you on that sort of feeling of nervousness around that. But I'm trying to think of. Go on.
I was going to say the other thing. We kind of mentioned a little bit about the politics and stuff. So we obviously all the different pantheons of gods are sort of there. The other thing I wanted to mention. So we did talk about like a brand new, not like sub-faction in Mecchanus, this idea of the mathematicians. Here, there is something called the Order of the Plains Militant, which is like a subsection of basically those who are devoted to building up the cause of law and goodness. So their own sort of like little army or patrols that fight evil and the fight things going on. And again, it gives you a whole sort of breakdown of that. And what I liked about it is that it's popular. It says it's popular with paladins and priests, but it makes you think about no shit, Sherlock. But again, maybe it's that sort of thing where we need to recruit an army. We need to find some specialist patrol person, or we need to learn from the best. We're going to go join the Order of the Plains Militant.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I kind of I shuffle over them because I thought, they're just so obvious. They're not like, as in, do you know what I mean? They're just like, they're another, I'm gonna go fight the evil people.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost like again, compared to say maybe Arcadia, which has all this sort of like, we need to fight, or even Archeron, this idea of fighting because we have to fight. Here it's like they're devoted to a cause, and it is lawful, and it is and so I think it's an interesting, again, all three of those are slightly, they're all, I mean, obviously they're all slightly close together in like what their goals are, but just because of the way they act, or like where they are on the good versus law spectrum, it is like, which one of them is the right way of doing it. And according to this alignment stuff, it would be the Order of the Plains Militant, but it might not necessarily be. I think they're the most lenient. They're the ones I would imagine have the most leniency to interpretation about stuff. Whereas the others not so much.
Well, I like their way that you join the team is the team. You know, the order. The team is they show you their symbol, which is a blazing sun at the end of an eclipse, and applicants to the order asked to describe the symbol. Only people who are optimists, who see the eclipse ending, are permitted to join. Those
How
who
interesting,
see
isn't it?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a little quirk. Which
Glass half full. I like it. Yeah, because I guess maybe again this idea of like the evil infecting people, and that's when they fall, is when they start to doubt themselves.
Yeah, it's
and
the
that
hope,
Yeah.
over and the joy that comes from it, that rather than the, fear leads to hate, hate leads to fear, fear leads to I never get it right. What is it?
Yeah,
You
but
know
yeah,
it leads to the dark side, basically.
Yeah, it leads to yeah. Fate leads to suffering. That's all I get.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
No.
So
Yep.
go on.
I was going to say the final place I want to talk about. I know we jumped around a little bit with the geography of this per se, but I wanted to talk about the Tower of Fire that's on the first level, and this is in the sort of the little primer at the beginning, and it's just this idea. Again, I see this as a stopping off point, like a quick adventure hook before you maybe go tackle the actual Mount Celestia. It is a tower that's made of entirely smooth marble and encased entirely with sort of like a fire of some sort. There's no way to approach it without enduring a good soaking in the Silvery Sea, but there's no danger of drowning, because if you talk to passing Archaeron saying, hey, could you get me over there, they will happily oblige. So you might be like, they're not going to let you drown, they'll get you to where you need to go. If you get inside, the interior is made up of a blue fire, and no one knows really what the purpose of the tower is. There's talk about it maybe being like a lighthouse, for a beacon for ships coming in from the sea, or maybe it's something to like, again, maybe like a tower full of testing, so maybe it's all this sort of blue fire is indicating that it's going to burn away impurities, etc. But there's also countless rooms that have not been explored yet. Those who go in, they may get a bit of treasure as it comes back. I didn't read
this bit.
Yeah. They say there's countless rooms that it changes every time because it shifts just as the fire shifts. So it feels very TARDIS, like this very sort of moving stuff. And there's rumours about like there's maybe fiends that have appeared in the tower, but they're not so sure. But I think the coolest thing about it is that those who spend too much time in the tower take on parts of its appearance. So your eyes will start to blaze a bright blue, maybe your skin changes in your hair, all sorts of things, that you become almost one with the tower. So I just thought, as such a cool little dungeon crawl, as this idea, and you can put as many rooms in as you want. There's
then you get Hotel California.
You get, yeah, exactly. So it's just, I just thought it was very interesting, this idea that here is a lone tower in the middle of a silvery sea, and no one knows what it's for. And this idea of like, well, it's going to be some sort of test, and that just feels very much like that 90s TV show Nightmare, where you're having to guide someone through and be like, where am I?
I was talking about that today, actually.
There you go, yeah. And it's like, sidestep to your left, your other left, and just like try and get them through, like away from the giant spider of, I don't know, truth, etc. So
that's really cool. I must admit, I didn't read the little primer at the beginning, so that is really cool. And I think that fits in, as I said, when we were talking about the layers, that first layer we didn't talk too much about, but it said it's on that sea coast. So it is very much those Grecian towns and sort of like that sort of like Mediterranean sort of feel to it. Which
lots of small island fortresses, it says. And
exactly.
What I say about that little primer as well, I think what's interesting is that obviously it doesn't go into too much detail about, it just talks about Lunia, the first layer, because that's the book you give out to your players. So it's like this way. So of course they're only ever going to know about the first layer, and then they were like, oh, I guess that we'll go explore the other places. Yeah, I guess we'll go up. So it totally makes sense in that sense. So yeah, it was very interesting, and I guess it was like, here is a town, here is this, here's Linnea, and here's a tower of fire. Enjoy, So
exactly.
Interesting.
Well, I think that's all there is to say about Mount Celestia.
I think there is. You know what? I will say, I think I've changed my mind ever so slightly. I do think there's stuff to do on Mount Celestia. I don't know if I'll be visiting anytime soon.
I don't feel so convinced.
No, I think there is stuff you can do, and I think you have to have some sort of either you're visiting one of the deities, either you're sussing out research on your enemy, possibly in the Nine Hells or in the Abyss. Or you're getting weapons or something like that. You're like going there for a purpose. You're not. I guess I don't know. Like, would you visit like a tour, like compared to Meccana's, which we talked about before? This idea of like,
you'd want to go see what the heck's going on there.
Yeah, like I guess it's like a touristy thing. Like there'll be people there taking pictures or writing down notes or trying to talk to Modrons, etc.
Disneyland tour.
Whereas Yeah. Whereas here, obviously, it's like, well, it's a serious, like, if you want to be part of this place, you have to work for it, and it's a path to pilgrimage, and it's that sort of very serious.
It's a bit like
thing like
it's probably touristy in the sense that people go to temples in Nepal and go up there. You know, it's that sort of
Yes.
like there's going to be tourists at the lower level who are going for the R&R, and there's the
Yes.
yeah, Mechanis is like, yeah, you'd go there because you're like, I need to find out information, I need knowledge, I want to apply
I need to get a bounty or contract.
yeah, contract, or yeah, there's sort of all the knowledge of the universe, or I want to go use the orrery. You know, I'm going there for functional needs, and Mount Celestia is like for like information based, I guess, like lore based. Like then here is like, okay, I want to rest, I want to recuperate, and I want to get some cool
It's
gear.
a holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to get better, you know, get better. And then go off on these other ones. Arcadia is, yeah, I think that's the thing. I think they've been an interesting bunch, the Lawful Planes. I think, as I said last week, I think it's proving that maybe, I don't know if it's maybe D&D itself and the way it's played requires you and attracts people who are more chaotic and slightly want the fun going to the evil places, or if it's just or it's the nature of the game, or it's just us. I don't know, but
I always assume if it's going to be us, but
yes.
who knows? Who knows?
Exactly, because yeah. But anyway, next week, where are we going? Where are we going after our lovely? We've rested, we're recuperated.
Yeah.
So we're ready for a nice adventure. So where are we going to go?
I think, you know what? Yeah, sure. We've gone up. It's time to go down. Next week we are going to the 9 hells of battle, deception and depravity. These are the 9 hells that sort of inflame the imaginations of travellers, the greed of treasure hut seekers, and the battle fury of all mortal creatures. It is the ultimate plane of law and evil, and the epitome of premeditated cruelty. So there you go.
So I'm glad we've had a nice rest.
Yeah, we're gonna end on a high by being really evil, and it's gonna be exciting. I will say, from my own sort of quick knowledge about this, in the DM's guide there is at least 2 pages on this. In the DM's 5th edition, there is a lot of stuff because obviously of the layers, and there's been many books about it. So it'll be interesting to go through it. So yeah, I'm excited to see what our planescape.
And that would be that, as you said, that would be the last of the planes of law. And then it'll be last of the planes of law, and then we'll move on to the planes of conflict, which is actually, I think, where some actual more fun ones come in. I think it's I think they are the underrepresented planes where we'll find some hidden gems. So don't think, oh, there's battle, oh, there's hell. They've done all the good ones. Please,
there's usually wait, yes. But until that time, if you want to find out more and watch the VODs and listen to our other episodes from our sibling podcast, the DM's Book Club, there'll be links all around us just now. I'm sure they'll come out. But until next episode, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
See you on the flip side, which will be hell.
Literally the flip side of Mount Celestia.
Literally the flip side of Mount Celestia, and we will speak.
See you in hell, suckers.
Yes, death. No. See you later.
See you later. Take care. Bye.